really appreciate my father-in-law. Thanks to him, we could have such a luxurious honeymoon. What do you mean? We used his bank savings. What? When I called my brother and his wife, who didn't show up at our father's funeral, his wife casually said this. Not only did they not help with the funeral arrangements, but they also had the nerve to steal my father's bank card. We rented a luxury car and toured Alaska, stayed in fancy hotels, and already spent $30,000. There's still money left. And we plan to enjoy our vacation until the last possible day. She kept talking, oblivious to my silence. Wait a minute. I remembered the balance in our late father's account and couldn't help but laugh. What's so funny? Are you so shocked about not getting any inheritance that you lost it? No, I haven't lost it. I burst out laughing, imagining the shocked faces of my brother and his wife when they find out the truth. My name is Emily. This is a story about the turmoil I experienced 10 years ago. At that time, I was 30 years old and just an ordinary office worker. My mother died in an accident when I was in high school. My father, Kevin, was a kind and gentle man who loved my mother very much. Despite his grief, he had to conduct my mother's funeral and tried his best to reassure us. Your mother is gone, but don't worry about anything. I'll take care of you until you're independent. He said this with a haggard face about a week after the funeral. With no reliable relatives, I think these words were also a declaration of his determination. Despite struggling with work and household chores, my father raised us without remarrying, and I respected him for that. But my younger brother, Keith, felt differently. While he had a good reputation and grades, Keith was obsessed with material things and money, always acting in his own best interest. Although my father tried his best with household chores, Keith constantly complained about his inexperience. Despite his complaints, he always claimed to be too busy to help out. Hey! Stop relying on Dad and me and at least take care of your laundry and dishes. Shut up. Legally, I'm still a kid. Kids are supposed to play and study. Right, Dad? Perhaps he was spoiled as the long-awaited son. My brother laughed at me for helping with the housework. Then, he casually said to our father, who was diligently preparing dinner, I told my friends about Mom, and they invited me to eat out with them. Can I have some money? Hey! Can't you see what Dad's doing? How can you say that? Seriously? Unlike you, I have friends. Come on, just $10. Here, take it. Don't stay out too late. My father gave him the money. Keith left the house without even thanking him. Seeing this, I got angry, but my father calmly said, at that age, friends are more important than family. It's just a phase. He'll settle down in a few years. However, Keith never seemed to mature, even as time passed. When he started college, my father paid all his tuition, allowing Keith to live as he pleased. Constantly asking for money and only coming home to sleep. By then, I had already found a job and started living alone in an apartment. I wanted to be independent and make things easier for my father. Seeing Keith, who depended on our father for everything despite being an adult, I couldn't help but criticize him. Keith scoffed, I got into a cheap college through my own efforts, so it's only fair that he gives me some spending money. If he didn't have money, he should have remarried some rich woman to make life easier. He mocked my father's love for my mother. I was stunned. I secretly told my father about Keith's true nature, but he either didn't know or didn't care. I didn't remarry because I didn't want to. And Keith is right that his efforts saved us money. As I said before, I'll do whatever I can as a parent. Living with Keith, my father said this, leaving me speechless. Even after graduating college and getting a job, Keith continued living at home without helping with chores or contributing financially. I earned this money, so I can spend it however I want. As long as I'm not independent, it's my father's responsibility to take care of me. Unapologetically, Keith said this while admiring a watch he had bought as a reward for himself. At this time, my father was nearing retirement. I suggested sending him money to help with his living expenses, but he refused. You don't live with me, so there's no reason for you to pay. Besides, you worked hard to earn your money, so you should use it as you see fit. If you have money to send, you should save it instead. With these words, my father continued working steadily, even after retiring, as a part-time employee. While my brother lived a carefree life every day, my father's modest lifestyle was hard to watch. So I started bringing him gifts on weekends to make him happy. A few years of this passed, and then, out of the blue, my brother contacted me, saying he wanted to introduce someone. When I arrived at the restaurant, I saw my father and brother in suits, sitting with a beautiful woman. "Emily, I'd like you to meet someone. This is Michelle. I've decided to marry her." The woman introduced as Michelle smiled and greeted me politely. I was relieved. She had a calm demeanor, and I thought my brother would finally become independent with this marriage. A few months after their wedding, I was assigned a major project at work and entered a whirlwind period. I didn't even have time to visit home, and before I knew it, 6 months had passed since I last saw my father. With my work settling down, I decided to visit home for the first time in a while. Just as I was thinking this, my father called. "Hello, Dad? It's been a while. I was thinking of coming home during my next break." "What? What did you say?" My father's words left me pale. He told me that after going to the hospital for a health issue, he was diagnosed with cancer and given 6 months to live. Confronted with this unexpected reality, I was in shock, my mind going blank. "They'll give you chemotherapy and other treatments, right?" Overwhelmed by anxiety, I felt my legs shaking. But my father's answer was unexpected. "No, I don't plan on doing that." "Why not?" "If you're worried about the money, I can help out as much as possible." "That's not it." "I'm sorry. I have things I need to do, so I can't just lie around. I will quit my job, though. Besides, your mom is waiting for me in heaven, right?" My father continued, sounding as if he had come to terms with everything. "Don't worry. I won't cause any trouble for you guys when I'm gone." Hearing him speak so resolutely, I couldn't help but shed tears. "Okay, if that's what you want, Dad." Accepting his words for the time being, I hung up the phone. I immediately called my brother. Even though my father said what he did, as his children, we wanted him to receive treatment. Still, what did he mean by needing to do something even though he was quitting his job? Puzzled by my father's contradiction, I waited for my brother to answer. "Hello? Hey, Keith. I need to tell you something." I explained what our father had just told me and suggested we help cover his medical expenses. Our father didn't have cancer insurance, and with only 6 months left, the treatment costs would be significant. "You've been living at home for a long time and relying on Dad. Now's the time to show some filial piety. I'll chip in too. So let's help Dad together." "What? Why? What does he mean, why?" I was stunned by my brother's words. Instead of being concerned about our father's condition, he muttered something on the phone. "So, Dad has cancer. So that means the new house, oh man, will it be ready in time?" "What are you talking about? Emily, can Dad still handle work and the house? Michelle and I are worried about that." "Are you serious? Did you even listen? Dad has only 6 months to live. Why do you care about that?" "Because we live with him." "What?" My brother wanted to save money for the future, so even after getting married, he continued living at our father's house. His wife, Michelle, not only didn't mind living with our father but actually jumped at the opportunity, saying, "We can save money, so absolutely." They moved in the day after their wedding. We want to save up for a down payment on a condo. Dad's happily living with his cute son and my wife, and we get to save most of our paychecks. "It works out great for everyone," my brother said smugly. Judging by his tone, he was still living a spoiled life. Hearing his words, I finally understood the meaning behind my father's earlier contradiction, and everything clicked into place. My father was overwhelmed with household chores every day, while my brother and his wife saved most of their salaries. It was easy to see how Michelle, witnessing my brother's lifestyle up close, would gradually lose any reservations and fully take advantage of my father. What cohabitation? This is more like parasitism. If that's the case, then there's no harm in using some of that savings to help Dad out. Why should we? I told you, our savings are for a house. Besides, with only 6 months left and cancer spread throughout his body, there's no point. Treatment won't change much and will only burden him. It's a waste of money. A total waste. I was disheartened by my brother's cold words. This is a family emergency. Don't you want our parent to live even a day or a second longer? That's your opinion. Don't force it on me. Anyway, we won't spend a cent on unnecessary treatment. With that, my brother abruptly hung up the phone, and in my frustration and anger, I threw my phone onto the couch. I couldn't leave Dad in the care of my brother and his wife. I immediately arranged to terminate my apartment lease and decided to move back home. It would take some time, but I could still commute to work, and I'd be able to take care of Dad if anything happened. Most importantly, I wanted to spend as much time as possible with my father in his remaining days. A month later, when I returned home, the first thing I noticed was the disarrayed state of the house, reflecting my brother and his wife's chaotic lifestyle. Half-drunk beers, scattered cosmetics, and discarded clothes were everywhere. My father was slowly cleaning up after them. As expected, this so-called cohabitation was a farce. My father was practically raising 2 overgrown children. Don't worry about the house. I'll take care of everything. Thank you, Emily. I helped my exhausted father to bed, then turned back to the living room with a sigh. According to my father, my brother and his wife were initially shocked to hear that he had quit his job. But once they found out he received a substantial retirement payout, they relaxed and continued their lives as before. Moreover, they told him, if you want to continue living as before, we'll let you, and they continued relying on him for household chores and living expenses. I was beyond angry. I was utterly exasperated. My father said he wanted to do whatever he could to ensure his son's future happiness, but that kindness was only enabling my brother and his wife. That night, after my father went to bed, I returned to the living room and encountered my brother and his wife for the first time since coming home. Wait a minute. Had they always been like this? Maybe it felt more pronounced because I hadn't seen them in a while, but they seemed much more ostentatious than when they first got married. My brother glared at me irritably. Hey, Emily. Where's our dinner? Emily, you came here to do the chores instead of Dad, right? Then you should do them properly. The laundry is piling up. Emily, are you this lazy? No wonder you're still single. Listening to them whine like children, I felt a headache coming on. I expected this, but for their first words to their sister in a long time to be complaints? I could overlook their complaints about me, but couldn't they at least show some concern for our father's condition? Listen, I'm here for Dad. I'm not here to take care of you too. What? You expect us to do the chores? We're working late every day. Yes. Most adults, including Dad and me, manage our own chores regardless of work. If you're planning to buy a house, you should start learning to take care of yourselves now, I said coldly. My brother and his wife kept insisting I do the chores, but when they saw I wouldn't budge, they eventually gave up and stopped speaking to me altogether. They showed no concern for our father's health, staying either in their room or out of the house most of the time. I assumed they were using their savings to pay for laundry services, hotels, or public baths. I noticed that our stockpile of instant noodles and juice was disappearing, and their clothes would sometimes end up mixed with our laundry. Despite my frustration, I was too busy with work, household chores, and caring for my father to complain. As long as they didn't force their chores on me or my father, I chose to turn a blind eye. What concerned me most was my father's condition. With each passing day, he grew weaker, spending more time in bed. I dedicated myself to his care and to helping him organize his affairs, trying to fulfill his wishes as best as I could. However, my father resisted all forms of life-extending treatment and medication, and a little over 6 months later, he lost consciousness and was taken to the hospital, where he passed away. Even after my father was hospitalized, my brother and his wife didn't show up, and I had to call them to inform them of his passing. I'm arranging the funeral right away. Be ready for that. Okay. My brother seemed a bit flustered. Maybe hearing about our father's death finally made him realize the reality of the situation. I sent my father to the funeral home and returned home to find it empty. Yet, I felt no emotion. I had no expectations left for my brother and his wife. I began the funeral arrangements immediately and served on my lead. Thanks to my father's prior preparations, everything went smoothly. The funeral proceeded without any issues, and I found comfort in the kind words and tears of the attendees mourning my father. My brother and his wife never showed up for the funeral. I was appalled by their rudeness and tried to contact them, but my calls kept going to voicemail. I finally got in touch with them a week after the funeral. "Hello, Emily?" It was his wife who answered the phone. It sounded unusually noisy on the other end. "He's at the front desk taking care of some paperwork right now, so he can't come to the phone." "Sorry." "What? Front desk? Paperwork? Where are you two, not even attending the funeral?" "We're at a hotel. We're in Alaska right now." "What?" "Well, we got a long leave for bereavement. We're taking a belated honeymoon. Skipping our father's funeral to use their bereavement leave for a honeymoon." I was stunned by my brother and his wife's outrageous mindset, left utterly speechless. But his wife continued nonchalantly, and her next words left me even more shocked. "We're really grateful to Dad. Thanks to him, we could have such a luxurious honeymoon." "What do you mean?" "Oh, Emily, you haven't realized yet? We borrowed the bank book from the valuables drawer and used Dad's savings." "What?" "We only had one valuables drawer at home. It was a small drawer that could be locked, where we kept all the family's valuables. The keys were held by my father, my brother, and me. Since I was managing my father's key, his wife must have borrowed my brother's key to open it." She continued, proudly, not at all ashamed of their actions. "While you were busy, we took action. The bank account would be frozen after the death certificate was issued, right? So, right after we got the call from the hospital, I rushed to the bank. It was quite a rush. While I was at the bank, my husband took care of the travel and car rental arrangements. This was all Keith's plan. We're smart, aren't we?" From an outsider's perspective, they were acting like looters, yet they had the audacity to speak that way. I was left completely speechless. Thanks to that, we toured Alaska in a luxury rental car, stayed in fancy hotels, and have already spent $30,000. There's still money left. And we plan to enjoy our vacation until the very last day of our leave. It's fine, right? She continued talking while I remained silent. Wait a minute. I recalled the balance in my father's account and realized something didn't add up. Considering one possibility, I burst out laughing. My sudden laughter puzzled her. "What's so funny? We have the right to our inheritance. Or are you so shocked about not getting any that you've lost it?" I laughed as I answered. "By the way, did you check whose name was on the account?" "Huh? The name?" "Of course, I did." "All right. Anyway, do as you please. I wasn't expecting to receive any inheritance." Annoyed, she abruptly hung up the phone. Good riddance. I was determined to teach these irresponsible, spoiled people a lesson. A few days later, my brother and his wife came back in high spirits. As I continued organizing the house, I approached them. "You mentioned buying a condo. Does that mean you won't be living in this house?" "If necessary, I can transfer the title. We don't need this old house. We're planning to move soon anyway. Do whatever you want with it." "Got it. I'll take care of it. There's probably nothing valuable left in the house after the pre-mortem arrangements. But if there are any mementos or things you want, feel free to take them. We don't need anything. We don't want to take old stuff to our new place," his wife said with a haughty attitude, then left with my brother to look for a new home. Their lack of help with cleaning and paperwork was actually a relief. As they finalized their decision to buy a condo, I began the process of selling our family home. I also moved to an apartment closer to my workplace. Not long after, I received an unusual call from my brother. He sounded frantic. "Emily, did you take my money?" Most of my savings are gone. Just as I thought. I calmly asked. I didn't do anything. Can you tell me the date and time the money was withdrawn? Ah, it was right before our honeymoon. My brother muttered the dates and times. At that time, I was still at the hospital. I had just been informed of Dad's passing. If you doubt me, you can check with the hospital. After that, I was busy with the funeral arrangements and hardly had a moment to myself. He must have had his phone on speaker. I heard his wife gasp on the other end of the line at my words. What's wrong? Did you take my bank book by mistake? Exactly. Dad's account was almost empty due to pre-mortem arrangements. What? Their voices overlapped in disbelief. Having never helped with Dad's care or the pre-mortem arrangements, they were clueless. When Mom passed, Dad forgot to withdraw from her account before it was frozen. He said it was a struggle to cover the funeral costs. Thanks to someone's spending habits, there wasn't much saved up. Dad wanted to ensure the funeral was covered, so we withdrew the money. There was nothing to withdraw from Dad's nearly empty account. Moreover, my father's name was Kevin, and my brother's name was Keith. In a rush and in poor lighting, it wouldn't be impossible to mix them up. His wife angrily confronted me. How could you not tell us? Why should I? You used your own savings for your trip. There's nothing I needed to say. They had abandoned their father's funeral for a vacation. I had no reason to be kind. What are we going to do? We can't pay the down payment for the condo now. That's not my problem. You're the one who made this plan. As the two argued on the other end of the line, I intervened. If you can't move into the condo, maybe you should look for an apartment instead of fighting. Huh? Why rent an apartment when we have a house to live in for free? What are you talking about? I frowned at my brother's response. Yeah, we'll live here until we save enough for the condo. Just transfer $200 a month for maintenance. Emily, you'll be happy to keep the house full of memories for just $200 a month, right? This brother and his wife were hopeless. I hadn't said anything, yet they were already excitedly celebrating as if it was a done deal. I had no choice. I had to bring these two living in their fantasy world back to reality. That's not possible. Why not? You live alone, and you could help out your cute little brother a bit. It's not about that. The thing is, the house has already been sold. What? My brother and his wife had been so caught up in their honeymoon and condo plans that they only focused on themselves. I could imagine their faces, full of confusion and shock. You didn't hear anything. I checked with you, and you both said to do whatever I wanted with the house. You even said you didn't need it. So, take responsibility for your words and get out. Goodbye. Wait. Before he could say anything else, I hung up. I couldn't waste any more time on these air-headed people. I blocked my brother's number, and of course, his wife's as well. At the end of the month, I went to check on the house just in case, and sure enough, they were gone. It seemed they had left properly, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Eventually, the process of selling the house was completed, and some money came in. I had no choice. I would have to share it with my brother. So, I unblocked his number. As if he had been waiting for this moment, my brother called almost immediately. Had he been trying to reach me every day despite being blocked? The thought of his persistence sent chills down my spine. Honestly, I didn't want anything more to do with him, but we needed to settle the money issue to avoid future complications. I took a deep breath and answered the call. Finally, my brother spoke in a frantic tone. You finally answered. Why didn't you pick up before? I need your help. He continued in a desperate voice. We moved into a new apartment thinking it would be fine, but the rent and utilities are high, and she won't do any housework. In short, after abruptly renting an apartment, they couldn't handle paying the bills or managing household chores because they had always relied on Dad for everything. My brother whined incessantly. It seemed they had finally realized just how dependent they had been. You finally understand how spoiled you've been. All his life, he had been constantly asking Dad for money and relying on him for everything, living off him completely. Suddenly being thrown into the real world, it was no wonder he couldn't cope. However, it was also Dad's fault for enabling them to become this way. Considering the inheritance distribution, if they were genuinely remorseful, I would teach them how to manage their household and finances from scratch. Just as I was about to speak, my brother suddenly began talking to me in a pleading tone. "Hey, Emily, don't you think it's partly your fault that your cute little brother and his wife ended up like this?" I take back what I thought. I took a long sigh. These two still wanted to blame others. I mean, isn't it your duty to come over and help her struggling brother and his wife with housework and stuff? Besides, us siblings supporting each other would be the best way to honor our parents, right? I'll give you our address. My brother continued with his self-centered and belated proposal, not listening to a word I said. "What are you talking about? I've been telling you to help out with chores since we were kids, and you ignored me every time. I was a kid back then. But you didn't change even after becoming an adult. You used Mom's death as an excuse to play around. And you relied on Dad for everything until now. You didn't even attend Dad's funeral when he was suffering the most. You have no right to talk about honoring our parents." He fell silent, and I continued. "The reason I answered your call was to discuss splitting the money from selling the house." "Really? So?" I was irritated by his suddenly cheerful tone. I decided to set things straight. "I should tell you, most of the money went towards demolition costs, so there's not much left. Don't worry. Unlike you, I have a sense of responsibility. I'll send your half via registered mail. Consider it a severance payment." "What? Don't you get it yet? I don't ever want to have anything to do with you two again." "To you? We were just convenient helpers or ATMs. Did you ever do anything for our family? You took advantage of Dad's kindness and ignored all my warnings. And this is the result. But without your help, Michelle and I can't manage on our own. Are you really going to abandon your little brother? We're family. If I hadn't come back home, what do you think would have happened to Dad? And prioritizing your trip over his funeral. Stealing money from his account, how could you even call yourselves family? That was all Michelle's idea." I felt bad about it for Dad. "So? You're pathetic. Now you're blaming your wife to save yourself. Even after Dad was diagnosed with cancer, he always thought of us first. He liquidated all his assets to cover his funeral expenses, so we didn't have to pay a cent. He fulfilled his responsibility as a father until the very end." I continued, addressing my brother who is now speechless. "And no matter how much you regret it now, the person you need to apologize to is no longer here. You need to accept that." After saying this, I calmly hung up the phone. They were the ones who cut ties with the family first. I had no intention of being kind or helping my brother and his wife. I quickly sent their portion of the money to their address, changed my phone number, and moved. Later, through social media, I found out about my brother's situation. From what I saw, they were barely managing, relying on part-time jobs, eating out, and using laundromats. Their savings quickly dwindled, forcing them into a life of poverty. Their marriage deteriorated as they blamed each other for their circumstances, but they couldn't afford to live independently. Instead of supporting each other, they seemed to be blaming one another for their situation. Their lifestyle became increasingly precarious, not only failing to buy a condo but barely managing to stay afloat in an apartment. They accumulated debt in their pursuit of a lavish lifestyle. And their social media was filled with complaints about each other and desires for luxury. Meanwhile, after moving, I met my current husband, and we got married. We have been blessed with 2 children and, 10 years later, are still happily living together. We both work, but we share household chores, which makes everything more manageable. I've heard that now you can't withdraw money with just a bank book, which is reassuring. Letting my guard down with family had led to that chaotic situation. Even though I wasn't directly harmed, Dad's foresight in preventing us from being burdened helped. Grateful for the family that supports me, I continue to pray for my parents.